Before I let them know. We're recording. Okay. It's joining. Uncle Rosso. Is coming. So let's give folks a couple more minutes. Does anyone know where?
I'm just gonna mute until you call to
sure.
order.
others are able to join, so I'll call this meeting to order. This is a planning committee meeting of Binghamton City Council. It is Thursday, September 11th, at 11:07 a.m. Could we please start with the roll call?
Councilmember Rathmel,
Present.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Present.
also present Councilmember Matavetsky.
Also present.
Okay, Councilmember Voskis is absent. And also present, we have Tom Costello.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Costello. That's okay. Feel free to unmute and chime in if you are able. Otherwise, we appreciate you being here. I wanted to, so this is the second planning committee meeting covering the proactive rental housing inspection program that was introduced in March and is under consideration by this council. Since its introduction, we had not only the first planning committee meeting, but a town hall to solicit feedback from community members regarding the program itself. And I think all of us, I mean, I guess certainly myself, several conversations with property owners, with tenants, regarding the program itself. So what I'm hoping to do today is just review some of the changes to the original draft that were relatively easy changes to make. We got some recommendations from Corporation Council in terms of legal aspects, and then just some requests from the community. So I'd like to review those quickly, but then spend the majority of our time on Article 3 of that draft, which covers the inspection protocol. Very specifically, I think we want to move in the direction of revising sections 10 to 14 to reflect more of an administrative inspections approach that is independent of New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, which was heavily discussed in the May 22nd conversation. Okay, so just briefly, and I will share this second draft out after this meeting. The changes will be in red, but essentially in going through, we discussed, and it was recommended by council that we include that this is a repeal and a replace of chapter 265(6) of the city code to establish this program rather than an amendment of that section. So that language has been adjusted. There were no changes to the findings supporting the need for this program. No changes to section 2 or the general standards of the program. There is a definition in section 2.3 that outlines code enforcement inspector or officer. I think I want to just note that we will need to include a definition and role for the administrative inspector, administrative field staff, once we are able to outline that out. Okay, under Article 2, in terms of registration and fees, welcome. Hello, come on in.
Oh,
That's okay. Would you mind just saying your name on record so folks know who's here?
Yes, Elizabeth Rasso, City of Binghamton.
Thank you. And we've just started reviewing. I made some, I don't know about minor, but some changes to the first draft, mostly that were recommended by council, but also by community members. And then we're going to spend the majority of the meeting on changes to Article 3, the inspections protocol specifically. Could I, and if I'm putting you on the spot, please feel free to say no. Would you, I know that you've shared with me your successes, particularly the orders that you've got in Supreme Court. Would you mind sharing briefly with other council members? Just kind of quick win.
Sure.
What we're looking at in terms of what's being recouped.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's fine. I don't think I know everyone's name.
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Let's do that.
I'm Kevin, I'm the 3rd District Council person.
Nice to meet you.
Hadassah.
Alright,
Yep.
Great.
Hi, Sam Costello,
Hi.
Deputy Clerk.
Good to see you.
And then
Oh,
on,
well.
On the Zoom, we have Tom Costello,
Former
former
director.
director. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And West,
We think he's there.
yeah, we think he's there.
He's there.
And West
Pretty
Side
sure
resident.
he's driving.
Oh.
Welcome, Nate. No, it's okay. You made it just in time. Joining us is Councilmember Nate Hotchkiss, fourth district. I just asked Elizabeth to share about her successes briefly before we jump into. She's had some recent Supreme Court orders.
So just yesterday, I got a fine for $10,000 in city court, which is good for city court. And then, besides that, we just had 2 Supreme Court cases that we won. And the one fine is up to about 400,000 for one property. And, another one is looking really,
400,000.
yeah. And each day there's more fines being added. And the other one we just got an order for. So we're going after the really tough, deplorable cases. And we're seeing huge success. So, but Supreme Court definitely helps. So yeah, so just, trying to take things seriously as far as when people are suffering. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I think it represents a very strong arm of the approach in terms of addressing building conditions and health and safety issues throughout the community. And this, I mean, the topic of our discussion today is that preventive potential. So ideally, we're beginning to build this approach that, yes, has what it needs. And I do believe your office needs more to prosecute and to bring these cases,
Definitely.
but provides the city with the opportunity to preserve housing in a way that doesn't see it just deteriorate to the point where you get to code court and have to move. I mean, it's kind of all of the above.
Right.
I guess would be my thoughts. Any thoughts on what was shared, or before we jump into?
My curiosity is like, so has it been 3 years or 4 years since you've been doing this?
3.
3? Okay. Does it feel like, do you get a sense that you're ever gonna run out of work?
No, I mean, we're barely scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so-
there's so many houses that we can't get into because
Mhm.
people are afraid to let code in. And I understand why, but we really need to get in. And that's where you come in.
Mhm.
I mean, we're just scratching the surface.
Gotcha. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I imagine would be the case, is that there's such an abundance of issues out there that like it's gonna take a long time to tease them out with just what you're doing, which I completely respect, but yeah, so I think there's more resources and effort should be put into this. That's where that was.
And one other thing I forgot to say is we did go downstate to grab an out-of-town landlord and arrested him and brought him here. He was in Rockland County. So that was also, that shows something,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, that, we are willing to do that, so.
I think this general feeling that property owners can just disregard code or disregard. I mean, I was with about half a dozen tenants at a condemnation hearing 2 weeks ago for a complex in my district. And I think we're seeing not only the increased efforts of your office, but I think there are community efforts that are motivating tenants to advocate for themselves. I mean, the first thing that the code officer said when he walked into the hearing was like, there's actually tenants here.
Mhm.
And so informing tenants that they can show up and advocate for their rights, even if the case is against their owner.
Right.
But I think because of the tenants' advocacy, it was very clear and put pressure on the property manager who was attending that condemnation hearing from his boat while on vacation. That like the work needs to be done and we're done not paying attention. So we've moved into this second draft.
Before we move on, can I
Yeah.
ask one question about, like you said, there's a downstate landlord that was like arrested or something?
Yes,
Was that? Like BPD didn't drive down there?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, really? So there wasn't any coordination with like local police?
There was, they held him for,
Okay.
they could only hold him for like an hour,
Oh,
and then we had to be there on time.
interesting. I was wondering how that would.
Mhm. And
Where does the 400, so you mentioned so far what's coming in, could you share where that goes? What budget line item is that recouped, or not the fines? Is that coming,
I mean,
There's a lot different between getting a judgment.
yeah, yeah, I don't really know. Like the 10 grand in city court, I don't know where that money goes. I wish I did know.
Mhm.
So if you can help me figure that
Sure.
out, but I know the state takes it and then they disperse a little bit of it to us. But the 400, it's every day there's more fines being added on. So when we finally execute that judgment soon, we'll have to I don't know where it goes, but I assume it comes to us.
we will, yeah, we can work on figuring that out.
I mean, we're gonna put a lien on the house probably, so that will go to us.
Yeah.
And then the owners are gonna be arrested.
Thank you for sharing, but also what you're doing.
You're welcome.
So just again, quickly, the revisions to the first draft, based on council's recommendations, we also took out the very specific fee amounts and just made it subject to the annual fee schedule. I removed, based on what we heard, pretty much, I think, full consensus from the landlords that attended our town hall, that they did not like that there was a maximum cumulative fee that caps at $2,500. They felt like if you are a large landlord with many number of units, you should be paying for each of them. So I took out the maximum cumulative fee.
I was trying, I think, I was thinking about this piece, and I think we're gonna have to talk a little bit more with the inspectors and try and figure out what realistically a time commitment for going through certain types of property are. And I'm thinking, you know, you might have a duplex that's got 3 or 4 bedrooms on each side, and, you know, so you've got versus, so that might be a 2-unit house, that might be a 2-unit house that's got 6 or 8 beds, versus you might have a whole 4-unit property, might be 4 1-bedroom apartments, so it's like trying to figure out what the workload is versus what the charge is. I think
That's a good point, and I think,
and there's not gonna be a perfect answer.
well, in some of what we talked about at our May meeting with the Director Schneider was, I mean, he agreed that our estimated hour per inspection is reasonable and appropriate. I think what we left out, to your point, is potential travel from, you know, someone one side of Binghamton to the next. So yeah, certainly still a work in progress in terms of our estimations. I also took out that the local authorized representative would have to maintain a local telephone number. We kept the residence or business address within the jurisdiction of Broome, but having a 607 area code didn't seem to necessarily.
Cell phones are a thing.
Right, exactly. There is, I mean, in the filing of summary proceeding restriction that we have in here, I do need to reconnect with Council Heary about making compliance for this a prerequisite, rather like a prerequisite to bringing a summary proceeding rather than a defense to be raised, but I'll get the language from him. Okay. So Article 3 inspections, and I know not everyone is necessarily looking at this, so I apologize. But a big part of our conversation in May was the opportunity to structure this as we haven't decided on a name, an administrative inspections bureau, something that is separate from code for the purpose of removing all of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code requirements. Another thing that so like identifying ideally a checklist that will still very much include all of the primary health and safety requirements that will need to be hit for a property to pass that isn't necessarily subject to the full uniform code.
It was about, and I think there's a big step forward in figuring out how we actually get this program implemented citywide and get properties registered and start kind of working away at what will immediately be a backlog.
Right.
Is to develop a checklist, develop a process to get a first look at all these properties as far as the kind of grading and severity of issues. From basically a basic exterior inspection. You know.
Right, I think the language that we've been using is a visual or partial exterior inspection that will be conducted by an administrative inspector once a property owner submits their registration to the clerk's office. And or eventually to that bureau if we're able to set it up that way. And that field inspector then categorizes based on how well that property does hitting the checklist in terms of health and safety requirements. Categorizes them likely 1, 2, 3, and then makes the determination on referring to code so that the worst properties are the ones that are being prioritized for full interior inspections first. We ran into, I mean, certainly concern from the code enforcement office, just a backlog, certainly. I think to your point of actually getting into these properties, really putting the effort into the worst ones first. There's going to need to be a whole kind of community education and outreach component to this rollout. But we also found that we couldn't necessarily target certain owners legally to be inspected first. So this is what we've come up with thus far to get around that.
So you won't be going into every home though?
Eventually, yes,
Okay.
that's still the plan, the triannual, this covers the rollout of the inspection.
okay.
So just in terms of the vast number of units that will fall under the inspection program requirements, our way of targeting the worst ones first, but then as we build into the triannual, like the goal is still that every unit will be inspected.
Good.
Yeah, regularly and routinely.
What about the uniform code? Why is that? Do you mind me asking?
Sure, absolutely, no,
Okay.
yeah.
Why is that being removed?
Not being removed, but just not meeting all those criteria for inspection, this kind of first pass, first look inspection. With the idea that we probably would be able to we wouldn't have to use fully certified code inspectors to do that first pass inspection, right? You can have somebody that has some training, go, wow, gosh, is there
Is the paint peeling?
is there is there
Yeah,
no,
and
is
we're
there
gonna get
siding
into
falling off?
that.
Is there a huge hole in the roof? Like, you know,
Mhm.
basic stuff, and then, all right, so somebody that's failing that very basic inspection is gonna move up to the high top list to get a full.
Okay,
So we're keeping uniform code, it's just after a referral from the partial exterior inspection.
okay.
And one of the things that we'll discuss during today's meeting is, that categorical methodology around the exteriors that's being considered.
Just think about the amount of people that are gonna take do this.
Yep.
But that's
Mhm.
But it's easier to find.
budget season coming up.
Well, budget conversations
know.
are on today's agenda as well. It may not, I mean, I don't think we're looking at 2026 unless it's like a single administrative support person as registrations come in. The implementation will need to be phased out. I think what's currently in the draft is that the registration component of all of the rental properties and property owners that are operating rental properties within the city. Right now, we have that deadline as January 30th or 31st, 2026. I think it would be reasonable to maybe push that out to the end of Q1, but it'll depend on when this is completed and adopted. But we anticipate that the registration requirement is going to absolutely be activated and effective prior to the inspection component, so that we can build up, not necessarily, I mean, they can start to roll out, but we're gonna need to build up the, I think, fees and program income from the registrations to begin to make budget decisions on who, like the field team. Is that a fair? Okay. I think what is missing from section 10, so section 10 starts the inspections required. Just do that in case it's helpful. What we don't have in, so we've got the properties that are subject to it, and then we move immediately into like if there's pretty much the code enforcement requirements. So I'm envisioning that we're switching out the preliminary code enforcement officer pieces and replacing that with the administrative field inspector. We can get into the weeds of the more than 10 rental units. I don't know that we necessarily have to today. I think we won't know the time period that the properties will need to be in. Actually, that's a question we can talk about. So section 10C, the frequency of inspections, we've already settled on that it should be every 3 years. But in terms of inspections from the day of registration, any thoughts on what feels reasonable? Let's say that process of a property owner hands their registration form to the clerk. What can we, are we even at a point where we can talk about a reasonable turnaround for like the?
We don't,
individual?
well, we don't know how fast they're gonna be coming in.
Okay,
If it's not super fast, then it seems like we should be able to get someone out for that visual outside inspection
then
within the week, no? I mean,
Ideally,
it's just,
I-
yeah.
I mean,
30 days came in my head.
Yeah, me
Just
too.
because picturing like a backlog.
That's what I,
Let's
to, like,
put it
schedule
in
all out.
red, we'll
30
put
in.
30 in and then we'll keep
Yeah.
working on it.
but ideally, they're getting triaged almost immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
And triage is a really good name for that first step,
Yeah.
but that's a thank you. The rest is just the frequency, like they can be inspected at a higher frequency if there are code violations. The notice of inspection in section 11 would, and this, I don't know if this is something that anyone around the table
Thank
or
you.
on the call can answer, but with the notice of inspection, if we're just doing an exterior partial inspection and not interior, nothing that would require admittance to the property, would a notice have to go out, or would it be a general, like, you've submitted your registration within 30 days, someone will
Someone
do
will
that
have
partial?
been by, yeah, I don't think,
you know,
I don't think you
Doesn't seem
need,
like it.
cause
No.
if they're standing from the side, I mean,
Mhm.
as long as they're not walking onto their property and poking their face in people's windows. If you see the outside inspection as including poking around, then you probably want to give some notice so that people aren't freaked out.
I agree.
But if it's mostly from the sidewalk,
Yeah, Yep.
then I
I
don't,
don't think,
I think
I
it
don't
has
think-
to be, right, so you're not.
for the
trespassing.
partial, yeah, yep. Yeah, and that should be sufficient. So that takes an administrative piece out. And then it would only be the cases that are referred to the code enforcement, and then code would follow their protocol of sending the notice, which we can leave those pieces in here, but. So there's that, rescheduling an inspection. I mean, that. At some point, a good bit of this transitions to code. So I think a lot of the language, the revisions end up being if referred to code for full uniform code inspection. So I can work on that. Is there, how do we, if it's a separate bureau? or just this administrative process? How would we? I'm trying to figure out what my question is, but we still want to be referring to code and there are fees involved in, there's already fees involved in reinspection. Is that accurate?
It's on the books, but it's
I don't
not.
think that.
It's not,
been
no.
enforced.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
We can
Say,
incorporate the rescheduling fees into any of our program income estimates anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
so say I'm. A landlord and I submit my. Registration to the clerk. Someone comes out, does the outside visual inspection, it looks beautiful. It's been painted, the fence is nice, everything looks great. Do I get like a temporary thing? Not, I mean, not habitability, but like a temporary thing that even though it's like you haven't done the full inside inspection, but I have something I can show my tenants to
Right.
say, or I can post up when I'm. Making an apartment posting online to show that I have some sort of certificate from the city, that's some sort of an interim certificate. Cause I
Okay.
haven't had the internal inspection, but
I think we discussed that that's gonna be necessary. because
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll have units immediately becoming
Right.
unrentable based on the
Mhm.
registration.
So some kind of notice of interim compliance for the
Yeah,
category one.
but you've been
category
triaged.
two.
we're,
Yeah.
we're not gonna get to your interior for
Mhm.
basically for 3 years.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, based on the outside of the exterior checklist, you can rent.
So the penalties are void.
Sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? And I apologize if I missed this. I'm just trying to keep notes at the same time as thinking about the clerk's office in this. So two things. One, and I may be looking at an old draft, is the rescheduling, it says rescheduling by contacting the clerk's office. You want the clerk's office to be responsible for the rescheduling of inspections
Which section is that?
under 12, I think, rescheduling.
By contacting the city's clerk's office at least 5 months.
So that's problematic for us because we really don't have a relationship with the code department where it would be appropriate for us to coordinate an inspection date for them.
Okay.
And just generally speaking, noticing of any kind from the clerk's office is not. So like the rental registration piece of it makes sense, like maintaining a database in the same way that we do with, because we are a fee collecting like hub of City Hall, that does make sense for us in the same way that we collect fees for electricians and plumbers.
Mhm.
So I think it falls in line with that general function. But noticing or scheduling or anything like
Okay,
that
yeah.
really should sit with the code
Yeah,
department,
I
and I
agree.
want that distinction to be extremely clear.
Okay.
To the extent possible in the language.
Okay.
Just because it's not an administrative task that we can take on, in the same way that when folks reach out to code and say like, who's a licensed plumber?
Mhm.
They send them to the clerk's office, and that's not our role. It's just not our role to interact with what is and is not appropriate for code. It's our role to collect money, and
Okay.
yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear.
Mhm.
Thank you. Sorry, I know that's.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's in, we'll incorporate it.
Thank you.
Mhm. Hadassah, to your point, some kind of figuring out that interim, it's I mean, the heaviest lift is the implementation, like that's, we all
Okay.
recognize that.
You know, you get like the paper plates if you buy a new car.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm thinking before you get
Okay,
like the
yeah.
metal ones.
That's helpful.
It's like the,
Yeah.
that's just what's going to
Like
mind.
your
but
interim life.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
I mean,
And with it, I mean, I don't know if we can set a date, but at least.
I know, yeah. I know, I'm just like, I guess my inclination is that like. You have, many, good landlords. And that they may feel like they're getting punished to not have their full certification until way later in the process. Because they've been told, well, you're pretty good, so we're not gonna deal with you till the end.
I mean, they essentially just keep doing what they're doing aside from
Right.
submitting the registration. And then the interim notice voids the penalties that are identified in this for non-compliance because they've passed that
Right.
initial partial inspection.
And I guess part of the question is in terms of the marketing towards tenants. To make sure that it's. Somehow make sure that it's clear what it is and it isn't, but without causing it. To be negatively you know. Cause it's like, on the one hand, we haven't been inside the apartment, so we can't assure that the apartment is really up to code. But on the other hand, we are not doing that step because we believe that the landlord is doing a good job and therefore you should consider renting the apartment. So like in terms of from that marketing side of like, we don't wanna. Make people feel assured of something that they're not being assured of, but we also don't wanna penalize the landlord who would. Like to have more of a premium apartment that comes with those assurances to make it not look like, well, it's only half inspected.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can represent it positively in that
Yeah,
we can
it's-
reasonably assure the health and safety aspects of the checklist. But
Nothing's stopping a landlord from requesting a CO on their own.
So if
the
someone, if
option to
someone,
opt in,
so
yeah,
it, so yeah, so like, I guess that would be like an additional
Yep.
fee if they wanna kind of cut the line to get the full, as you said, full metal license plate.
I've asked, or I've had two large property management company staff ask me if there will be the option to voluntarily opt in. I actually wouldn't attach like an extra fee to it. They'll still be responsible for the registration fee, and I think we could include on the registration application form a box that's like, do you want to opt in for a voluntary uniform code inspection? And then,
Well, they're gonna get it eventually anyway, but an earlier,
right.
would you? Like to be front loaded?
Mhm.
I just was thinking in terms of the administrative burden though, then you may find that a lot of. The quote unquote good landlords may want that, and then that's gonna then take your. Your staff time away from inspecting the properties that. Like finding that balance of
Do we
making sure we're
want,
getting to people that need help. But also not. Penalizing.
do we want to add the option, so some municipalities do have the option for. We were completely against in putting this together, the option to self-certify. But the option of having a third party inspect and confirm on behalf of the property owner, so that it doesn't tax city resources, but still gives them, do we want to allow that opt-in option?
So what would the
Which is-
credentials of that
Like
person
a
look
home
like?
inspector or something? Are they? Do they?
I mean, I'm leery of it. I would just rather have code. Because they can rig things, I think.
Yep, I'm generally weary as well. I'm not a huge fan of that option, wanted to throw it out.
Is that something that the other communities that you've reviewed have
There's
had?
the option of like, you can hire a third party to. And they still have to, I mean, they have to sign off on it, they
Yeah.
have to. But yeah, it can depend on, you could just have a really cushy
Yeah.
relationship with the home inspector and
See that,
get it signed off on.
you know, a guy. but can't
Exactly.
pass.
Right. Okay, I'm not gonna add that in.
I mean, I guess it pushes it back onto the tenant, which part of the whole point of this is to remove the pressure from it being complaint driven, but
Right.
you. Hypothetically, if there's people really pushing the boundaries of that, eventually somebody complains and then you say, we have this inspection record and our inspectors go in and then we compare and we say. This inspector is BS, and I don't know if there'd be a way to go after them to try and have some sort of penalty hanging over somebody who signs off on it that was pencil whipping or not going in with good intent. If there was a mechanism for.
Right, I think it's an ambitious administrative mechanism to consider at the outset, but as the this process grows and there's actual tracking and coordination, I think it could happen. What was the one thing that just popped in my head? What do you think?
No, it's a balance issue of quality versus, or ensuring quality versus capacity.
Well, that's what I was thinking, like, code doesn't cease to function with this implementation. So tenants still, or neighbors, like, it can still
Right.
call
Normal.
code and
Right.
go through the normal process. So even if there's and then it becomes at the discretion of the director to
Compare,
prioritize the full inspection, or to like, I mean, if that happens, they would submit, I think that the communication between the two. They might be in a category 1 because of the exterior, they pass that, but if code identifies violations and we have it in here in the language. You know, as long as we're communicating on both sides. Then that, they're not gonna get their interim compliance. So. That's how to round it out. The results of inspection, I don't think really, so we've got. And this. I think this is gonna have to break out into like results of the partial inspection versus results of the code enforcement officer. And there are aspects of the code pieces that may already be in place outside of what we originally envisioned as an amended process. But we still have that if there aren't any violations, then they get the compliance notice. And then it goes through what they do if violations are found. That's not the administrative piece. And then I think going back into the draft and again, specifically 10 to 14 and just parsing out what would the administrative like field inspection team protocol be versus code, and then determining if we're making the referral to code, do we even need all of the language relative to code in here, or does that just roll into I think there are ways to strengthen code protocol through this, but ultimately, does it just roll into existing ordinances? What am I not?
like you mean in terms of the penalties and stuff.
No, just the
Yeah.
inspection process. I think the penalties remain. So the penalties would be if if a property owner doesn't pass the interior inspection, the uniform code inspection, that's where the penalties come in of not being able to rent without that compliance letter. Not being able to file a summary proceeding unless they have a notice of compliance, like that's where the penalties come in, but I think it's the interior rather than the first pass. So we'd have to make that very clear and make the interim notice piece very clear.
And if I think you alluded to this already, we worked out the functionality of essentially being able to file.
Yeah.
With city court for whatever eviction, say, and showing that letter. Or compliance with making that part of the process, is that something that is workable with
That
Consider it
was,
unified court system versus city government?
that was Council Heary's recommendation, and I think it could look a few different ways. It's either that the owner has to submit the notice with their summary proceeding, or that whomever's bringing the proceeding submits, or that the city clerk's office, not y'all, the court clerk's office has access to an updated list of who is on that confirmed compliance
Do you know of anything that works that way now?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's not possible. But I was gonna say, about the interior versus exterior, there can be really bad conditions on the exterior that are dangerous. That should also be factored in. Because you're talking about only the interior, correct? As far as
Oh, you
penalties.
mean- Well, no, the exterior would essentially trigger the referral to code or not, but everything would then be considered in the follow-up inspection. It would be full interior and exterior.
Okay. Regarding penalties,
Yes,
okay.
yeah. Sorry, no, I said that in a way that was confusing. We're at 11:47. I wanted to talk a little bit about budget considerations. We are getting into budget season. I don't anticipate we'll be fully or even partially funding this in the 2026. Do we think there's any space for administrative support for registration, receiving registrations? And that essentially, I mean, receiving registrations is the city clerk's office.
Me talking about budgetary considerations for staffing for that particular. I mean. If we added a whole other position to it, that's a lot. Money, I could see potentially. Like designating one of the senior licensing clerks to be a rental registration, like to adding that to a position. And potentially increasing or changing the title of that position. That would be something I have to talk to Kent about.
Okay.
Or to personnel about, like what that would look like. Because right now, both senior licensing clerks like fully, like have full duties of what that job is.
Mhm.
And I don't know that this would like constitute needing to add a whole other like personnel. Yeah, but I could talk to the clerk about it and see what that might look like in terms of staffing. I will say it does sound like a significant amount of administrative
Mhm.
responsibility. Such that it would necessitate changing the job description of whomever takes it on.
Would,
I do think, for your, not this, but the related proposal, relating to the CDBG money with, I do think would likely need another person in planning to help with managing all of those projects and tracking all of that, so.
Yeah.
That's not this, but, it's
Oh.
the offshoot of this in terms of
Right.
actually fixing buildings.
Mhm.
All of that between those two, I think we're gonna need another staff in
You know-
planning,
I agree.
To be honest,
planning?
in planning to deal with,
yeah,
cause there's,
So I introduced a proactive code rehabilitation assistance
Oh,
program.
okay.
Using a good portion of unspent CDBG dollars that would support rental property owners in making some of the health and safety, pretty immediate health and safety deficiency repairs. And that would be within the planning.
in order to actually have that money spent down and not have a backlog that's years long, we're gonna need additional
I
staff.
agree. What were you?
I was gonna say what might be useful is actually, and again, this was something we could talk to personnel about, but if you had an administrative support that was split between code and the clerk's office, like that's maybe a creative way of dealing with it, and it actually responds to a lot of some of the tension that goes on between like the electricians and plumbers stuff that I outlined as well. Like there is a relationship between the two offices that doesn't have a designated person. There's only
Okay.
one strictly administrative person staffed in code right now who's busy doing all of the other things. So we could talk through what that might look like, but like having a person designated to share that unique role between the code and the clerk's office might actually be a creative and helpful way of dealing with it, and you would pay for it out of a budget line from either, you'd split the budget line essentially between the clerk's office.
Good idea.
Okay. Cool.
And we're gonna need another attorney.
Definitely.
I think that's,
Think
yeah,
two
at
more.
least what, yeah,
Yeah.
and
I really
that's-
think 2 more
And that's in our,
and 2 paralegals.
How you doing over there? Chair of Finance. Our wish list.
yeah,
But it's not only a question of money, it's a question of finding the people.
Mhm.
You're already short. Or you've got open position for attorney right now, right? You've got 1 or 2 open planning positions. You've got.
do we have an open up position for, I mean, like, do you mean council Evans position?
Well, however you want to, we're short an attorney.
Would
Right.
that like be appointed?
Well,
Right.
I don't care if you're, I mean.
He's just talking numerically.
Numerically, we're understaffed.
I'm just pointing out that the reason that might be.
Yeah, then it's an
vacant
election year.
Is different than necessarily.
Right.
having the fall
And
back.
having a targeted position might be more appealing to somebody who is passionate about that issue than a general attorney for the city position.
Right.
Right, I mean, you were attracted here because
Yeah.
it was a specific housing related.
Definitely.
And there are people that are passionate about that issue.
Yeah.
So.
Good point.
If,
And to not be appointed is attractive. So
Yeah.
More security.
Yeah.
Okay, so initially, I don't. When we were looking at staffing and additional code enforcement officers, we were identifying for additional. Code enforcement officers. Do we think 4 is a reasonable number for an administrative field team?
How many properties?
It's a great.
That's a
Well,
good-
properties, there's a
I
good
mean,
question
I
about.
think
how
our
many
range-
We don't know.
Our
Some,
range is somewhere
some you don't
between
know.
12,000 and 19,000 units.
I think it's on the lower end.
I think it's on the higher end.
Yeah.
From what I see.
No, it's a ridiculous range, but it's I mean, and you make that face every time because Doug sent us. The numbers that Doug did, but ultimately, we don't know, but I think what I did was base it on 19,000. And also base it on 1 hour per unit, but again, if we're talking this first pass administrative inspector. That's gonna go quicker, far quicker.
Yeah, I mean,
Still likely gonna need additional.
to me, it sounds like for some of the initial work that it would just be like a contract work or temp work. To just deal with the initial setup. Like in terms of the people that are just doing the 10-point checklist that aren't actual certified code inspectors. That you
Right.
just have a. Mini, team of people, and some of those people may end up coming on for a full-time job at the end as things are settling in more, but that you have the flexibility to have a contract team or something at the beginning.
So we know that we would need additional code enforcement officers, but we would be building this administrative field team. Forward. I mean, again.
it seems like it
the
could be
rollout,
part-
it would be several. Years, I'm thinking of how to pitch to it, like, we really only need you at the beginning of this program. So,
Some of them are gonna be permanent, otherwise, you're getting some professional training, like some.
okay,
Like it conceivably could be part-time and flexible. I mean, there's so many people that need part-time and flexible that there aren't opportunities for that. You could do the work anytime between basically sunrise and sunset.
I
Do
apologize, I
you-
have to bow out and reply to the mayor.
all right, okay. Nope, that's it, we're gonna
Thank you so much.
close here, well, thanks, Robert.
So we're
the
losing
only-
quorum technically though.
Nope, it's.
No, oh, you're also planning. Okay, sorry. Finance was, no. So 3 of you on finance.
This is
Good.
planning,
No, I know, but
Finance and planning are the same.
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
The only other thing that I wanted to try to land on today is scheduling the next town hall.
Mhm.
Where ideally by the next town hall, we've ironed out the revisions for the second draft. And it can present, because at this point, like not only with the rehabilitation assistance program, we've addressed or attempted to address all of the very small property owners who were like, I'm not gonna be able to fix these deficiencies, but they've got minimum history of, or minimal history of code violations. So like, we've addressed that request. I think by the first pass, we addressed a number of landlords' concerns that it would be the full thing, as well as the administrative. So like, there's enough to talk about in terms of the feedback that we've been incorporating into the revisions. Obviously, we don't want a town hall during budget season. So that's the end of, I mean, so October would be our first available.
Well, I mean. Yeah, so the last week of October. I agree.
Do we want to shoot for the last week of October? Do we feel like, I mean, it would give us.
I will say. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
the budget amendment, like the final budget amendments are due on the 31st. So given that,
Let's do, yeah,
given that you're all on finance, I would say, and that's like the
let's
stressful.
move into November.
Yeah, so the first week of November, we have a work session and a business meeting, but if you wanna cram it in. The same week and just call that week the wash,
Or we could do October 10th.
October
Which-
10th.
Yep, which would be a Monday without a work session.
We have two budget
I'd
hearings.
rather do I mean, not that I'm on the committee, so I don't get.
Or I'm sorry, not October, November. I'm very sorry.
I was like, that's why I
November
repeated it out.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, November 10th, you guys are free that, I mean, council, there's no council meetings that week.
If, again, I'm not on the committee, so my schedule is not to be prioritized, but my preference would be for a Wednesday over a Monday. Just based on my husband's schedule, but that's, Wednesday's-
That's that.
yours is absent,
I have
okay,
my kids on Wednesdays.
that's
Although they have grown quite familiar with coming to meetings.
fine.
We need a playroom. This
That-
could
that
cut
would be
in half.
great. It really is.
Cool. Okay, we're being recorded, I just want to remind you.
Okay, so potentially November 10th.
At
for
some
the
point, yeah,
next-
so, okay, so I'll put up.
All right,
temporary
so let's do
here.
it, let's do a tentative, and then that would mean that I can commit to the revisions and the additional conversations with Council Heary before then, which I think gives me enough time, so.
So I'm gonna send this to the planning committee and the rest of council, and Elizabeth, I'll include you, it's just a tentative calendar hold for
Thank
town hall.
Thank you. Okay, we are right at noon. I think we covered what we could. Feel like we're making progress, but thank you for being part.
Oh, God.
What-
Did you wanna say anything, Tom? I think he accidentally turned this video on.
I do have no doubt that, I mean, I can follow up. with
Yeah.
Tom too.
Okay,
I'm
sounds
sure
good.
he has thoughts. Okay, all right, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm not
Any
voting.
opposition? Cool, great, meeting adjourned, thank you.